As we drove to the hunting grounds, Hector and Randy got tossed around in the back because the roads in town were not very well maintained. "So how do you feel about going on this trip with your old man and my fellow idiots back there?" He gave a hearty chuckle. "I'm pretty excited. I'm glad you brought them along. They seem nice enough." "Yeah, I figured it would have been boring, just the two of us. And hey, you hadn't really talked to them up to this point, so why not, you know?" The drive was about 10 minutes. Along the way, my dad and I had a nice chat about life and everything that had been going on in each other's lives. Meanwhile, Randy and Hector were arguing about who missed shots more often. It got kind of heated, and my dad slammed on the brakes, which tossed them into the cab. My dad busted out laughing when he did this, and the way he laughed made it seem like it was the funniest thing in the world. Randy and Hector did not share the same amusement. We made it to the hunting grounds, and another truck was already there. It had a thin layer of dirt over it, which anything around my town got if you didn't clean it regularly. We got out and grabbed our things before making our way down to the trail. My dad commented about some good spots to start with before we went deeper into the woods. We set up a spot about half a mile down the trail. Hector immediately upon sitting down pulled a drink out of his bag. He tossed one to me and to Randy. I instinctively caught it, but then I realized I shouldn't have and tried to hand it back. "Come on now, you can drink that. You're an adult now," Hector said. "I just don't really like it, but thank you for the offer." He shrugged and took it back. Randy accepted the offer for free booze and began to drink his rapidly. My dad got my attention quietly and pointed out towards the hill in the distance. It was hard to make out exactly what he was pointing at in the early morning light, but I'm sure it was a deer. "Ready to see the first one of the day, guys?" He got everyone's attention to try to show off how good a shot he was. However, right when he was about to pull the trigger, Randy slapped him in the back of the head. This caused him to miss aim and completely miss the deer, which ran away. Randy cackled like a madman afterwards, exclaiming about how it was payback for earlier. I'll admit, it got a chuckle out of me as well. We waited at that spot a couple more minutes before moving on. When we got to the next spot, I thought I saw someone off in the woods, away from any trail. I pointed it out to my dad, who thought the person must be an idiot. Going off on the trails is a good way to get shot. Whoever it was seemed just slightly taller than the average person, but this wasn't really enough to make me nervous or anything like that. As everyone was setting up, the person vanished into a thicker area of trees and was gone from sight. I didn't think much of it. By this point in the trip, enough time had passed that the sun was now above the horizon and the lighting was much better. I managed to hit a deer, getting it. Everybody seemed happy that I was able to do it on my first try. But like I said, I wasn't that big into hunting, so I wasn't terribly excited. The morning passed peacefully. Every now and again I could catch glimpses of the dude moving throughout the trees. I never could get a good look at him because of how far away he was. It never crossed my mind that he might be following us. Another thing that never crossed my mind is that we never heard anyone else shooting, despite the fact that someone's truck was in the parking area. The day was fairly uneventful. We did the usual hunting things, like getting deer, comparing accuracies, and what have you. By around evening, I'd say we were about 6 or 7 miles into the hunting trail, and I was starting to get tired. I carried on, however, because I was having fun. We made it to the next spot, and when we got set up, we smelled rot. Now this didn't really catch our attention, because it's a hunting trail. Hector decided to look for the source of the rot. He said he wanted to move it away because it was foul. He wandered off where he believed it was coming from, and we paid little attention to where he was actually going. He never came back. After about 30 minutes of his absence, Randy noticed that he still hadn't returned, and the rot smell was still present. When we were alerted to this fact, we started to look for him, calling his name and leaving the trail. After a while of searching and walking around, we were lost. We couldn't remember which direction the trail was in. This resulted in an argument, which I was forced to break up, because it was the least productive thing we could be doing in that moment. When they stopped, my dad had the idea to try and listen for footsteps and follow whatever direction they were coming from. We all sat silent, and a realization made my stomach sink. There was no noise at all. No wind, no rustling leaves, no birds singing. Nothing. It was still and silent. I looked to the sky to see if there was an oncoming storm, but it was clear. We did hear footsteps after a couple of silent seconds. They were coming from a thicker part of the forest. By this point, it was becoming increasingly dark, so Randy pulled out his flashlight and turned it on. We made our way into the thicker part of the forest. We walked together so no one else would get lost. While looking around, I bumped